welcome again to everyone. The CNETT team really appreciates that you have made the choice this afternoon to share your valuable time with us. And while will be having most of our participants from Trinidad and Tobago, we also have participants here from Barbados. We should be having from Jamaica, the United States, Canada, the UK, and I really do believe we may have a representative from Italy as well today on our call. So welcome to all. I invite you to put your name and where you are from in the chat box so we can follow everybody. If you're from Trinidad, put where you are in Trinidad. And if you're from outside of Trinidad, probably what state and the country that you're in. Yeah. Lyndon said he sent out the explanation about the rules of engagement, muting all the microphones, so I won't go through that at this point in time. So I am Bibi. Some of you know me as Shanaz. I am the founder and the CEO of CNETT, the Caribbean Network for Empowerment Through Training. Those of us who were on the last conversation got a little bit of explanation about CNETT, but in a nutshell, I do believe CNETT is a pioneering business model. We're an online cooperative that's supporting the development of micro and small businesses in the hope that we can build them to be successful. Many people ask me, why am I focusing on micro and small businesses? And that is my calling. The World Bank statistics show that more than 80% of the businesses across the world are micro and small businesses. In our country alone, Trinidad and Tobago, we have more than 20,000 small businesses. And personally, I believe it's a lot more than that if we include the home businesses and some of the new micro businesses that are being formed at this time. So I want to ask you, this is going to be a really interactive session and we'll be operating through the chat box. Why do you think we in Trinidad and Tobago, or whatever country that you're in, why do you think we have a growing number of home and micro businesses at this point in time? What's the driver for more and more micro businesses being formed? The survey shows that the micro businesses are really the ones that help create wealth and share wealth in the economy. It keeps people employed and it actually provides a more resilient economy as we go forward. So I'm sure we can have another conversation about our value to the economy, but today we're going to talk about building the consciousness in those businesses. So with that as a background, my premise is that since the micro businesses wield so much power, since there are more than 80% of all businesses are micro businesses, then if we in this category get the thinking right and get the systems right, then this, I believe, is the group that can make positive change happen. I really sincerely believe that if we as owners and we as employees in micro and small businesses could get our mindset right, can create the consciousness in business, then we could ripple this out into the community. And that's why my business model for CNETT is being built within the framework of the Conscious Business Declaration. So again, we would have mentioned this in our first conversation, and Lyndon will put the link for the Conscious Business Declaration in the chat box so you can check that out. And our work in CNETT is linked to the Sustainable Development Goal 8, which is decent work for all and economic growth. So we're linking all two together. I think it's a good fit. Decent work for all and economic growth and Conscious Business Declaration and conscious businesses. To me, they all integrate into a really nice puzzle there. The Conscious Business Declaration lists 7 principles, and I'm going to focus on one, which is in alignment with what we're talking about today, that when aligned with oneness, business can be the most powerful engine on earth for creating prosperity and flourishing for all. I'm going to repeat that with my mission. When aligned with oneness, micro and small businesses can be the most powerful engine on earth for creating prosperity and flourishing for all. So that's my premise that I'm working on. And as you develop your businesses, I encourage you to find the principle upon which you could build your business. And you can check out the conscious business principles. So I first heard about these principles when I did my conscious business change agent program. And they made such an impact on me. They felt so right. They felt like this was the answer that was needed in this space and time. That, as I just told you, I reconfigured my business idea and I used it as the subject for my final project with the conscious business change agent. And this is where I met Stephen, our guest this afternoon. So I will use that background to introduce Stephen. We at CNETT are super excited to offer our second CNETT Conversation and welcome our very special guest, Stephen Dynako, Super Ambassador of the Social Chrysalis Education Platform. And just as I can say so much about Stephen, but I'll try to put it in a nutshell. Stephen delivers future thinking and thought-provoking messages aimed at inspiring action towards actualizing an individual's creative potential in their work and accelerating one's evolutionary power. It's a mouthful. It takes some, you have to really, really read it to really feel what is happening there. And he focuses on the attributes of the consciously evolving human, one who sees that crisis presents opportunity for social transformation. And I thought that was so relevant to where we are now. One who sees that crisis presents opportunity for social transformation. So Stephen, I want to welcome you to our conversation this afternoon.
So thank you, Bibi. I'm really grateful to be here and just honored that you asked me to be part of this conversation series. I really honor the work that you're doing, and happy that your project turned into like the manifestation of this as the conscious business movement in your region of the world. And it's certainly an example that we need around the world. So I'm just really grateful to be here and honor the work you're doing and happy to contribute however I can to your mission.
Thank you, Stephen. And Stephen has always been very supportive of what I've been doing. And I want to give Stephen kudos because I was just talking to him before the session started. And so far we know of 3 persons that Stephen has trained who've been extremely successful. We have Wendy on the call. Wendy has published an amazing book. And we have Laura, who is making waves across the world with her positivity and her conscious parenting and lots of stuff. So obviously, what you taught us, Stephen, really gelled with us. It aligned with who the personalities that we are and our missions and our visions. And I think your course led by you were able to help us not just talk about it, which a lot of people do. A lot of people talk about things, but you were able to give us a methodology to move forward. And for that, I am grateful. And I know the others in the class are grateful as well. So Stephen, is this your first time having a conversation with a Caribbean audience, one, and with an audience where a lot of these things that you're going to talk about, they're very new concepts to a lot of us here?
Yes. So I'd say they're new and they're familiar at the same time. It sounds paradoxical. I realized in my own business background, I worked in a typical corporate environment for many years, and the values that over time, as I became a leader and a manager in that environment and working closely with people, is my values were people-centered, and they are people-centered. And it didn't ever make sense to me that I would separate my own desire to see people flourish, that I couldn't really separate that from the way I did business. And I feel like we all have that, like at our core. And it starts with our families. And granted, our relationships with members of our families are on a spectrum, but I think I'll make a general statement that, you know, we have, you know, we start our relational life with our families, and we have a certain feeling for our families, a sense of care, protection, wanting to do our best and see and have the best for the people in our families. And that then is something that is a template and a model for us going out into the world, right? So then we desire the best for our communities, our neighbors, and so forth. And I feel like that those values are, I just naturally brought that into business. And so in a way, you had said, you know, this conscious business movement in some way is new. I also see it as some way it's returning to what we as humanity is encoded with. You know, we're encoded to care for one another, to be present, to want the best for each other. So in a way, it's almost just it's remembering that and then bringing it into the realm of business. So we all have the coding, and it's like, okay, let's be aware that we can bring this into the business environment, and that's completely fine.
I think that's a very profound statement, and I appreciate the correction, although it wasn't, that conscious business is not new. It's actually returning to the center of ourselves, but a lot of us have lost that connection to the center. We live in such a business as usual world where it's all about the competition. It's all about being first. Even from the education system, you're trained to become first and not think about the persons behind you, and that travels with us through school and definitely into business. So I think that was a very, very important point. A lot of us on this call, I think, you know, I'm interacting a lot with people in the coaching arena, and we are all lost. There's something missing inside of us, and we can't seem to find what it is and how to get there. But I think that's what it is. It's this connection with everybody and everything, and this oneness principle that we talked about. And the big question is for this group is, how do we develop that within ourselves and translate it into our business? So it's a very valid point. So our audience today, we have quite a few business owners, and I know many of them are dealing with the fear and anxiety brought about by the pandemic. And personally, I believe a lot of us had fear and anxiety before the pandemic. It just made it worse, right? Things started to spin out of control. So as an entrepreneur yourself, Stephen, can you share with us a bit about your journey into the arena of conscious business? Like, how did you transform your ideas into an actual business? I know that as an entrepreneur, there are highs and lows that we have to go through. How did you survive those difficult times? And just let us know where you are right now with your business.
Sure. Yeah. So that there's a lot wrapped up in the answer to that question. So I'll try to be succinct. As I've been both an entrepreneur, and as I mentioned, I've worked very extensively in the corporate world, you know, for large companies. And so I've got both experiences. And I would say, like, I feel like my conscious business training actually started in the typical traditional corporate world. And as I said a moment ago, it was, I could not bring my human values into it. And I realized, like, alluding to your comments as well, we're socialized out of all of that. Like we come in and get educated, quote unquote, or trained in the typical or the traditional model of business, and we're somehow told that to be empathic, to be sensitive, to have emotion those are all our weaknesses. So we're socialized out of that, and therefore we're expected to be tough and to be ruthless and to be non-compassionate or uncompassionate. So we're just socialized out of all that. And as I said, when I went through my management experience, I felt like, okay, I was going to get the best results from people. And this is an intuition. This is not, I did not figure this out logically, but it was an intuition that if I treated people well, that I would experience them at their best, quite frankly. So that's where and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So my conscious business experience started in the corporate world. And I wouldn't have called it conscious business at the time. I wasn't aware of that term at all. It was just the way that I was showing up authentically as myself. So, so then as I went to entrepreneurial ventures, I, took that way of being into it. And now just fast forward to where I'm at currently, with a platform called Social Chrysalis, it's really taking those values at the universal level and preparing people to show up to practice the principles of consciously evolving. So Social Chrysalis is an education platform, as you mentioned, and it's an education platform that teaches the skills of conscious evolution. And that whether you're working in business, whether you're working in healthcare, spirituality, infrastructure, justice, what have you. But it's based on Barbara Marx Hubbard's Wheel of Co-Creation, and there are 12 kind of meta sectors of society. So Social Chrysalis, the ultimate vision is for it to teach the skills of conscious evolution in all 12 of those sectors. I'm going to go back and refer really quickly to a document that's Bibi sent me in advance of this call, just to go through a few things that she had said she might be asking about. And maybe I'll talk about the domain of conscious business in the middle of this pandemic, which is a worldwide experience. Actually, it's interesting because we have this, for the first time in probably all of our lives, because the last time there was a pandemic of this scale was over 100 years ago, right? So we are all living through something together, a shared experience on Earth, for the first time together, and it's impacting every aspect of our lives, including business. So one of Bibi's questions to me in this that she had sent me in advance was, why is conscious business vitally important, especially now with this pandemic? And I feel and I did a talk on this several weeks ago, like the metaphysics of the coronavirus. What is the greater meaning of the coronavirus? It's because it's not just a pandemic. It's presenting humanity with an opportunity. It's presenting humanity with an opportunity to look at all of the different ways that we do business, that we do government, that we do infrastructure, that we do healthcare, etc. And it's exposing, and we're experiencing this, it's exposing the cracks in the veneer. We realize, I feel, that all of the endeavors, our human endeavors, and the institutions that have operated these endeavors for the last 100 years, they're all very fragile, actually. And this pandemic has exposed the cracks in the veneer and has made the cracks in the veneer wider and bigger. So what that means is that this pandemic is giving us an opportunity not to wish for the old normal, because you hear a lot about that, like, when are things going to return to quote unquote normal? And people are really yearning for that, and it's understandable because it's familiar, and we desire to go back to the way it was before because it's familiar and we know how to operate in it. And now there's this pandemic that's actually turned everything upside down, and there really isn't going back to the old normal. And that's scary, and that's also exciting because it gives us an opportunity to really look at every system that we have created of human endeavor and say, okay, we can actually in some ways reset and go back and take a look at what can be reinvented, what can be recreated, what has to break down and then be just completely built back up from the ground up. And business is certainly, let's say, the system of business in terms of capitalism. It's one of the systems that I feel is on the table for that. So then how do we show up as conscious business people? And, you know, there was a really profound, and it's not, I can't take ownership of it, and I don't remember where I heard it, but it's a very profound definition of the economy during these times, because there's been all this talk of how the economy is suffering. And it's almost like the economy is being referred to as if it's a sentient being in and of itself. What are we going to do about the economy? And the economy is suffering. Well, the economy is not a sentient being in and of itself. The economy is part of our current system, and there's all this talk of the economy's been stalled, or we've had to shut down the economy. And one of the things that I heard that was very profound that I can't take credit for, but it stuck with me, is that actually the economy is continuing. The economy continues in the sense that people at the local level are showing up to help friends, their neighbors. People at the local level are relearning old skills like sewing, carpentry, growing their own food, etc. That's all the economy. It's actually an ecosystem view of the economy. It's not just all about the exchange of dollars and cents and currency. The economy is actually, if you look at the root of economy, it's all about householding. Okay, the economy is about being a good householder, being responsible in the stewardship of the house. So if Earth is our home, quite literally, the economy is how we steward our resources on Earth, and how we are stewards at the most local level to take care of each other. So the economy indeed continues. In that sense, the economy actually has been reinvigorated, because this pandemic situation has presented us with the opportunity to show up, to be more helpful, to be more benevolent, to be more compassionate, to actually re-up our skill sets, to do some of these manual things that we've sort of lost touch with over time. So as it relates to business, it gives us the opportunity to really look at how do we show up to perhaps in some ways reinvent business? How do we show up to serve as business people in this kind of current domain, this current situation? And I think for everyone who's on this call, and you know, Bibi has said CNETT's mission is all about small and micro businesses. And this is now the age, in a lot of ways, of the small and micro business, because they're local, they're hyper local, and that's where the service is needed, right? You can look at global businesses that, for instance, if it's telecommunications, we're all connected here on the internet because it's a global system, which is great, and it's perfect that we can do this, and we all can affirm our connections with one another through a medium like the internet. And so let's not say but we'll say and it becomes so profoundly important that we and you all, as micro and small business owners, have an opportunity to just be of such more profound service at the levels where you're at, because business really is about that householding, the true meaning of economy, to be of service at the most local level. So Bibi, I know you're back now. So I was talking about how this pandemic is actually providing us with the age of small and micro business, because it's so important to be able to show up locally, to provide support, service, compassion, getting back to old traditional skills that we've lost touch with over the years.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Stephen. I do apologize. The internet just dropped and we lost everybody here for a little bit. So thank you for handling that. Yes, and I agree with the fact that we need to step up locally. It's something that CNETT has been doing, trying to develop businesses locally, even understanding the global context. Yeah? So I'm going to go into the questions, Stephen. What we did is we did a survey, and we took some questions in advance. So we're going to just throw these questions out to you. So from your perspective and your experience, you can answer them. And what we did, we put the questions into categories. The first category is with respect to structure and function. And these are the questions that came in. What exactly is a conscious business? That's as basic as it gets. And how is it usually done? And what does it look like with respect to structure and function?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces there. So I'll just refer back to my original statements about, conscious business. Really, it's a human-based business, which to me isn't anything new. It's just remembering that we're all humans and we're here in the human family to be of service to one another. So if your business is coming from that value, that set of values, then to me it's a conscious business. And then as far as structure, so can you give me a little bit more? Is there a little bit more color you can give me in terms of structure? You're talking about literally how it's set up, or?
Yeah. So again, I'm going back to our education system. When we learn about businesses, we learn about organizational structure. We learn about the value chain, procurement, production, processing, marketing, sales, finance. So I think in our minds we break it up like that. We may have to rethink that model, but that's what most of us mean by structure. How does looking at a business from a holistic, conscious perspective impact on that structure?
Yeah, I'd say so many of in terms of bigger businesses, I mean, all of those pieces, those functional pieces remain. Perhaps the difference, and if we get beyond, we understand that there has to be structures to support the operation. So it's not all of a sudden you put everybody in one big room and you sort of have them fumble around and figure it out. It's not about that so much as I feel it's how do we operate within the structure.
Okay.
And I would say a conscious business is being able to recognize and call out people for their particular genius within the meta structure of the company, right? So the way I look at that is, and this is scary for a lot of managers, is that if you have an employee that will do better and perform better and actually will be more connected to the work in another area, because he or she they might start in the mailroom. I'll give you a typical example, right? Somebody starts working in the mailroom for a company, but they want to be, they want to work their way up, right? So you help people do that. A conscious business is actually going to help people flourish by being interested in their growth. And if that means taking them outside of your department, you have the courage to do that. If you're holding people back because you're afraid of losing somebody who's a good worker, but if they're not connected to the work, or if they're miserable there, it doesn't benefit anybody. So I would say a conscious business is going to have the courage to actually shift people around and have the structures might be somewhat solid, but then the movement of the people is fluid based on people's genius, really, quite frankly. Their genius, their desire, where can they serve best? And I think a conscious business will and does practice that first and foremost.
I think that's a question, that's an answer that's very relatable. So the structures stay, but it's really the way that we implement the methodologies inside the structures. And you're right, it's pretty scary. It probably is more difficult to do in those larger businesses, medium and large businesses. But in our version of it, the micro and small businesses, it becomes a lot easier to do because we are in control of staff and we are in control of structure and system. So again, it's falling right into alignment with micro and small business development. It is within our purview to be able to do these things a lot easier than the larger businesses. So I think that's a really, really good answer. You talked about genius, and I know you do genius coaching. Can you just explain a little bit about that as you talked about it?
Yeah, sure. So, we all have what I would say, I would call them our inherent talents. It's the thing that you're young and you're growing up, you very quickly there will be certain things you can do with little effort. They just come to you naturally, right? So these are like your inherent talents, or you can call it your genius. And again, we're socialized out of those. As we go through the education system, such that it's been, we're taught that we can't pursue our passion, or we can't use our passion because we'll make more money if we learn how to do accounting, for instance. Well, not everybody can be an accountant, or not everybody can be a lawyer, or not everybody can be, fill in the blank. So how then, if we're operating consciously in the world as a conscious humanity, I feel would recognize each person for his or her genius, and then encourage them to use that. So that's in terms of genius coaching. I would help people get in touch with those latent or those dormant skills and talents that they've maybe pushed down over the years, and help them reconnect with them, and then help them express those gifts, that genius, for their own flourishing, the flourishing of their vocational life, etc.
As my coaching program talks about, it's awakening to your true reality. Yeah, I've recognized that it's really an awakening to who we really are and what we came into this world with, what our mission, our personal mission is. Yeah. So, yeah. That leads us into the other set of questions. How do you convert an existing business to being conscious? I know the explanation that you gave just fixed all the questions that I have, but I'm still going to ask you the questions because so
Sure.
we get answers. The question was, is it a top-down approach, or is it a bottoms-up approach? And how do you integrate your business model to support a purposeful mission while focusing on the growth of the business? And this one is an important one. How do I know that I'm using best practices with respect to conscious business? Because one of the questions that somebody asked is about greenwashing, and CNETT is related to that now. We are looking to partner with others, but there's going to be so many people who say that they're conscious and appear to be conscious. How do we know, how do we find the best practices for the organizations that have best practices?
Sure. So I'll just go into the concept of the greenwashing. Part of this is an intuitive feel, which is part of like expanding our consciousness, is really to embrace our intuitive powers as well as our analytical ones, and our logical ones. I would say, pay attention to the feeling you get when you're interacting with a business. And you can tell greenwashing is pretty easy to spot, because you can sort of tell they're using the words just for the word's sake. Like, oh, conscious business, that's like the latest thing, so therefore now I'm a conscious business person. Or we're a conscious business. And you could tell pretty quickly in your experience of using that product or that service, that whether they really are conscious. So there's not, I don't think there's any kind of mystery there. And then going back to your comments, your question about whether it's bottom up, top down, it's actually both. You might have a CEO or a president of a company, or the leadership tier that says, oh, we're going to be a conscious business, and try to push that down. Now, again, if that tier isn't conscious, if for them it's a buzzword, they're using it as a buzzword because it's the latest thing, it's really not going to trickle down anyway. because people will sort of sense that it's fake, right? So so I think in a lot of ways it's probably more powerfully, it will happen more powerfully from the bottom up. I mean, we see this now where with the millennial generation and even the generation following, that people want to work for companies that are conscious, that have that are based in human values. And if and a lot of them, if they end up with a company that isn't that, or it's just giving lip service to it, they won't stay. So that becomes a bottom-up dynamic. And so it's going to be all about who people want to work for, in what environment do they want to work. If they want to work in a conscious environment, the company's already, in a sense, has to be conscious. The leadership has to be conscious. And if it isn't, then you won't have people show up there.
That's really an interesting answer, because as you are speaking, I'm seeing my life unfolding, and I've gone successfully from job to job every 3 to 5 years. And I think that's what's been happening. I did not recognize consciousness, even though I didn't know that was what I was looking for. I recognized that I was not in alignment with what the system was offering. And, I ended up forming my own company, because now I can embed what I really truly believe is a conscious way of doing business into my company. So that's really, really very relevant, the bottoms up approach. And I think it's very difficult, you guys who are in the audience, feel free to put information into the chat boxes. What do you think about the bottom-up approach versus the top-down approach? I know in our part of the world, it's extremely rigid in the hierarchy. If you have the top management in one belief system, woe unto you. It's not going to change, So that's something that we could discuss further. The other question, Stephen, is this perpetual question about profits and a conscious business. In the last conversation, Steve told us to get rid of the notion that you cannot be profitable and be a conscious business at the same time. So I think it's a new thought for a lot of us, but can you take that a little deeper? Can you be a profitable business and be a conscious business?
Well, so short answer to the question is yes. You won't, really, you won't have a business if you're not profitable. That's just, there's no way you can continue operating unless you want to give everything away, and then you still have to have the wherewithal to do that. So, by nature of the current definition of business, you actually have to realize profit in order to remain alive as a business, if it were, as it were. So, and then you can sort of peel back the layers of what profit means beyond just the money, right? So do people feel fulfilled in the work? Are they contributing? And indeed, is the company contributing? Again, I'll go back to my earlier comments about the pandemic and kind of this domain we're in, or this milieu we're in around global pandemic, and how we're all having this experience at the same time together. And business has an opportunity to show up to be a generative, not just a force for good, but I'll say a generative force for good. And business has to be profitable in the world, to the world, on behalf of the world, which means it is providing the world with what the world really needs right now. So that's a form of profit, is the quality of what the business is putting out there. It can't be extractive anymore. Because we've learned that that's an old paradigm now. And that's why there's such a tension around something like energy, right? Fossil fuel companies Um, and we've learned that like our climate's been compromised. And before the pandemic, the focus was all on climate, and now the pandemic is actually giving us a different view of the climate crisis. It's also taught us that if we want to change, we really can. We can change quickly. I think that's the other lesson of the pandemic. It's one of the metaphysics of the pandemic is when we really want to, or when we're compelled to change, we can make the positive changes. And rather than make excuses that, oh, that's not possible, or we can't do that in our lifetime, or whatever it happens to be. So to me, a profitable business is one that is also paradoxically just giving and offering to the world something that's profitable to humanity at large. It's not just about local profit for the business, but then profit for those you are serving. So I think it's what I'm getting at there is I'm expanding our definition of what profit is and and for whom it's profitable.
Certainly, it's a redefinition of what profit is, away from just financial, and into broadening that definition. And that's probably going to be a hard sell generally. I know in our earlier conversation before this, you had some very strong views, and I would like you to share those views with us now. I know we're coming to that 150 mark, 10 minutes before we're ready to close, but I really wanted to hear and for you to share your strong views on what I just said. It's going to be a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
I know for us in Trinidad, I've tried, my group has tried to bring people on board this conscious business and this conscious way of thinking. We've hit walls until we get frustrated, we get depressed, but we keep going on, and little by little we're gathering people, not only in Trinidad, but people from Barbados, people from Jamaica, people from Italy. They're coming on board, but it's not an easy task. And a lot of times even my team members tell me, is this worth it? Are we just wasting our energy trying to help people who don't want to be helped? So what are your views on that?
So thank you for inviting me into that question. It is hard, and frankly, our post-industrial revolution version of business has worked so well for so many people at the top that it is difficult and will continue to be difficult to break the paradigm. And it is dysfunctional as it is. We know we can't continue operating the way we have been, and yet those who have done successfully, I'll put that in quotes, in that realm are going to they will fight to the death to keep the system as it is. And I think that's something we just, as conscious business agents, let's just accept that is a reality. And it actually gives us some freedom, because it gives us some freedom to focus on where we can have influence and impact. So I don't have conversations with people who are so attached to the current / old paradigm, because I'm never going to get anywhere. And that's where a lot of our frustration is. I think we're trying to convince people who are working in that system, and will stick with it. They'll stick with it until the planet Earth melts. And not to be flip about it, but that's where they're at. And it's like, okay, so we know then we can have the conversations, and not just the conversations. I want to get away from that word and just say we could take the action. We can take the action where the action will be received, accepted, and it's going to have influence and impact. So that gives us a sense of, as depressing as that sounds, that also gives us some freedom to be able to work in the domains, in the realm, and with the people that we can have the impact together. And that's the evolutionary impulse. I mean, despite the frustration, we still do this work and we still believe in it because the evolutionary impulse to it's the way it is. I mean, we are agents of that, and there's no other option other than to evolve in our estimation. So we're going to do what we can to evolve. So I honor you all for showing up that way, because that's what's needed.
And again, that's a very freeing answer for me. I think you just gave me permission. If ever I needed permission, you just gave me permission to focus on what I want and don't feel that I have to take everybody along, and help me understand, and I hope the others as well, that there is something called an evolutionary impulse inside of us. And the fact that we all stepped up here, all 14 of us who are here, even though we invited 75 people, 14 people showed up. And again, it's not about talking, it's about doing. So what's the next step for us? What can we do to step up, to show up in this world and to be the conscious leader that is needed at this time? And I guess it doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering and major. It probably is, Stephen, just what we can do in our space, yeah? What do you think? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you're all, I feel you're all here doing business consciously. And it's not just business, it's like doing your family consciously and being in community consciously. So you're here, you're doing that. So keep doing what you're doing, and support one another. You know, ask for help too. That's the other, I think it's part of the old paradigm where we feel like we got to take on the burdens ourselves, or if we ask for help, somehow that's seen as a sign of weakness. I mean, I know it's a very American thing, right? That if we ask for help, we're somehow weak. But that's it's part of engaging all of us. Like you talked about the oneness earlier. So if we really are practicing oneness, we are not only offering our genius, but then we're receiving the output or the product of the genius of others. And sometimes we have to request that. So if we're doing business consciously, we're putting it out there and we're receiving it and asking for it.
I really appreciate that answer. And I love this little group that we have here. Just this morning, I reached out to Maria on our call here. Maria is in the US, and she was able to support me this morning as well. So I love the group dynamics that we have. We are very supportive of each other. I want to respect your time, Stephen. We have so much more that we can talk about, so you have an open invitation to come in and chat with us. When I came off the internet, I lost a lot of the chats, so I can't see the questions that people put in, but I certainly will pull them together. And I know you very kindly agreed to do a meditation with us to close the session.
Sure.
And I will hand that over to you to do that meditation with us now. And when Stephen is finished, I'll just do some wrap-up comments.
Sure. Yeah. And just let me also say, Bibi, I'm happy to come anytime. So if you have a particular theme and you'd like me to be present for that, please, yeah, don't hesitate. All right. So with that, just invite us all to become centered and still for these last few moments, and just feel the cadence of your breathing rhythm. Just become only fully, completely in touch with your breathing. Just know that you have no other obligation right now other than to breathe and to be. Just follow your breath as it comes in your nose, down your throat and into your chest, feeling the expansion of your chest. And then follow it back out again as you exhale. Just mindfully follow the flow of the next few breaths. And then feel the gravity of the earth that holds you on the spot where you're seated. And really feel into your body, feeling yourself breathing, feeling your body held by the power of the earth's gravity on the spot where you're seated. And just know that you are grounded. You are here. You're not going to float away. And as you feel that groundedness, it helps to relieve anxieties, racing thoughts, any tension. Because this connection to the earth is also a shared connection. So though we are gathered from all different corners of the globe at this moment, we are connected physically and foremost through the power of the gravity of the earth that keeps us all on the planet. So we are connected to one another in a very real way, in this way. Just feel the gravity connecting you to the earth, and then the earth is the medium by which we are all connected. And that is proof of the oneness Bibi spoke of earlier. And then just honor yourself for showing up consciously, for having that courage, for following the evolutionary impulse, the evolutionary impulse that guides you to being a generative human being, to using your genius in a generative way, to creating and operating your business as a generative entity. And in this way, you are of the most profound, powerful service to humanity and the planet. And you are part of the evolutionary economy. You are a contributor, and we need you. And just honor yourself for that in this moment. Just express gratitude for that impulse in you and for your agreement to show up consciously. And then together, let's just take one nice deep breath in together, down into the chest and then further into the belly. Just sit up a little straighter, hold that breath at the top for a moment, and then release. And when you're ready, open your eyes, be here and be aware right now.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that's a beautiful breath to end the conversation with. Thank you so much. Just gonna do a little bit of wrap-up comments. Continue to post your questions and comments and feedback. We'll certainly pass it on to Stephen. Our third CNETT Conversation is scheduled for June 17th. And we have a representative from Mind Valley who will be here with us to let us know how they can help us with our personal transformational journey. Many of you have signed up for this already, and if you haven't signed up yet, please go to our landing page to sign up for it. From what Stephen said, this is our time to step up. So I'm asking you, yes, we can talk as much as we want and we could think about it, but this little group here that's just forming, invite someone, spread the message and invite another like-minded person. As Stephen said, we don't have to convince everybody, but I'm sure you know one like-minded person who could become part of this growth, of this community, so we could continue to grow the conscious business movement in our little spaces and globally. A reminder of our methodology. Today was a day of inhalation, where we have come together in a sacred space to discuss concepts and ideas. But in order for change to happen to you, to us, and through us, we have to exhale. So for the next 3 weeks between this conversation and the next conversation, really deep dive into what Stephen shared with us today. Do some extra reading, do some meditation, and take some quiet time with it, and start putting it into practice in your own lives. Stephen was very clear that the consciousness is about people. It's basically how we treat each other. at the simplest level, how we treat each other, and start putting these things into practice. So we will be sending out a poll after this conversation. Until we see each other again, be safe. Any final words, Stephen, before we go? Are you good?
I'm good. I do actually a daily meditation. If you go to the Social Chrysalis Facebook group,
Yeah.
I do a daily meditation, and those are all archived. So during this pandemic time, I felt led to do a daily meditation called Feeling Connected. So particularly if you're struggling with being in lockdown and just not feeling like you're connected in the same way to others, I put a meditation out there that I hope can be of some service. So that happens on a daily basis.
Wonderful. So Lyndon would have put the link into Stephen's Social Chrysalis. So you have that link in there, and Stephen has invited us all to do that meditation with him on a daily basis. So Lyndon will unmute all of us so we get to say goodbye to each other and be safe. Thank you again, everybody, for spending this hour with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I appreciate
you.
it very much.
Thank you.